There's something you do that you've probably never fully examined. It happens quickly, reflexively. Someone bumps into you on the street, and the word is already out of your mouth before you've processed who moved into whose space. A meeting runs long, and you apologize to the next person for the delay. A delay that had nothing to do with you. Someone in your life is in a bad mood, and you find yourself scanning the last 24 hours for what you might have done.
It's not guilt exactly. It's not low self-esteem in any simple sense.
It's something faster than both. Something that doesn't wait for evidence. Something that is already decided before the facts are in. That the most likely explanation for any friction in the immediate environment is you. And the strange thing, the part that most people don't sit with long enough to actually see, is that it doesn't feel wrong when it happens. It feels responsible. On the surface, apologizing is a social repair mechanism. Something went wrong, you caused it. You acknowledge it. The relationship rebalances. Clean function. Appropriate use. But watch what happens when the apology arrives in the absence of any actual wrongdoing. When it's reflexive rather than reasoned. When it's less a response to what happened and more a preemptive move. A way of positioning yourself before any judgment has been issued as already accountable. Already small, already taking up less space than you might otherwise be entitled to. That kind of apology is not social repair, it is social management. And the distinction matters because it tells you something about what the nervous system believes is happening in any given room. There's a concept in psychology called hypervigilance to social threat. The chronic, low-grade scanning of interpersonal environments for signals of displeasure, tension, disapproval. Not paranoia. Nothing so dramatic. Just a persistent attentional bias. A nervous system that has learned to monitor the emotional weather of the people around it with the kind of precision that most people reserve for genuinely dangerous situations. For someone with this pattern, other people's moods are not background noise. They are data. Urgent data. Data that requires immediate interpretation and, often, immediate response. The apology is that response. It is the fastest available tool for reducing interpersonal tension, whether or not you cause the tension. Whether or not the tension is even about you. It works in the short term with remarkable reliability. And that reliability is exactly what made it a habit. A lot of people who apologize compulsively grew up in environments where the emotional state of at least one person around them was their practical responsibility. Not formally, not consciously, but functionally. The mood in the room was something they were expected to track and, when possible, correct. A parent who needed managing, a dynamic that required constant calibration, an atmosphere where tension arrived unpredictably, and the fastest way through it was to absorb it, to take the shape of whatever the moment needed, to be, above all, not the cause. You were not the cause. You were never the cause. But you learned to move as though you were, because moving that way kept things from getting worse. And eventually, the movement became so habitual that you stopped noticing it was a response to anything. It just became how you occupied space. Slightly apologetically. Slightly ahead of the accusation. Slightly smaller than you actually are. There's the person who prefaces almost every opinion with a softener that technically removes the opinion. I might be wrong, but this is probably a stupid question. You don't have to listen to this, but the content of what they're saying is real. The opinion is genuine, but it arrives pre-diminished, already discounted, already asking permission to exist before it has said anything worth judging. They do this not because they lack confidence in the content. They do it because they have learned that unqualified assertions, statements that simply take up space without hedging, carry a social risk they are not comfortable with. The apology in advance reduces that risk. It tells the room, I already know this might be too much. I've already done the work of making it smaller, so you don't have to. Or the person who cannot receive an apology without immediately returning one. Someone says, I'm sorry I was late, and before the sentence is finished, the response is already forming. No, I'm sorry. I should have been more flexible. It's completely fine. I wasn't waiting long. The apology gets absorbed and reflected back almost instantly, because sitting with someone else's accountability, actually letting them be wrong, actually receiving the acknowledgement, requires a quality of self-positioning that feels, somehow, dangerous. Like claiming something. Like being the kind of person who gets apologized to. And that, for reasons they couldn't quickly articulate, feels like too much. Or the subtler version, the person who doesn't apologize out loud, but who reorganizes their behavior in response to someone else's mood so thoroughly and so immediately that it functions as a continuous, wordless apology. They didn't do anything, but they've adjusted, softened, made themselves more convenient, because some part of them registered the shift in the room and immediately began the work of not being the reason it stays shifted. The compulsive apology is not a sign of weakness, it is a sign of skill. A very particular, very practiced skill. The skill of reading a room faster than most people can, identifying the point of tension, and deploying the most efficient available tool for reducing it. In the environment where it was developed, that skill was probably essential. It reduced conflict. It maintained relationships that might otherwise have become unstable. It kept things functional under conditions that would have been genuinely harder to navigate without it. The problem is not the skill. The problem is that it operates on automation, that it no longer asks whether the situation actually warrants it, that it fires in response to any social friction regardless of cause, because the nervous system stopped distinguishing between I did something wrong and something is wrong in this room, and I am in this room. This is the distinction worth carrying. The apology that comes after genuine reflection, after you have actually considered your role, assessed it honestly, and found something worth acknowledging. That apology is relational. It is a choice. It is information you are offering about how you see what happened. The apology that arrives before any reflection has occurred, the one that is already in your mouth before you know why. That one is not about the other person at all. It is about your own internal threat management system, trying to keep the room safe. It is, in its way, a kind of self-erasure. Not violent, not dramatic. Just the quiet, habitual shrinking of your own presence in response to a danger signal that may not even be real. Most people apply that idea outward, turn it toward other people, toward the world, toward the things worth noticing. But there's a version of it that turns inward. The rare, uncomfortable act of attending to yourself, to what you actually did and didn't do, to where your responsibility actually begins and ends, to the difference between being accountable and being preemptively guilty. That kind of attention is harder than it sounds, because the apology before thought has been running long enough to feel like honesty, like you're simply telling the truth about your own limitations before anyone else has to. But there's a different truth underneath it, one that doesn't announce itself easily, that you are, most of the time, less responsible for the weather in other people than you were taught to believe, that the mood in the room was not and is not yours to fix, that the friction that arrives in ordinary social life is usually distributed, usually complex, usually not primarily about you, and that the version of you that existed before the apology, the one with a full-sized presence, an unhedged opinion, a willingness to occupy space without preemptively making it smaller, that version was not too much. It was just not what the room asked for once, a long time ago, in a room that no longer exists. The question worth sitting with is not why you apologize. It's what you've been apologizing for, and whether, in whatever room you're in right now, it still applies.